Just a kind of quick introduction of who Reviewr is and kind of the goal behind this webinar series. At this point in time, Reviewr works with hundreds and hundreds of alumni associations and university systems across the country. And we try to host these webinars, what I call series, is once every month. As of late, we've been doing them every couple of weeks. And they're really focused on kind of key industry trends or insights or challenges that we might be seeing. We're a Council of Alumni Association and executive sponsor and partner sponsor. And so with that meeting coming up in a couple different weeks, we've been doing a lot of research amongst our existing clients that we work with of things that they're seeing within the space as it regards to alumni recognition awards, not just challenges that might be facing, but also new ways of running it that kind of optimize the marketing side of things, how they can increase volume, how they can get better data from their alumni into their alumni database records, and things like that. So the goal today is to kind of keep a relatively condensed 30-minute or so webinar series where we'll kind of talk about the ultimate or undeniable alumni recognition award workflow that we feel based off our history and our experience, as well as kind of leaders in the space of how they're running their awards, should be powered in these programs. And of course, every alumni association has different vision, different mission, different values, and that's at its core the different elements that we want to see kind of go into your alumni award. So from a logistical perspective, there's a lot of things that we can automate and we can kind of share with the masses, but then it's very, very important to kind of think about what makes your program unique to you and make sure that kind of stays at the forefront and the focus of the program. So for example, when it gets to like review and selection processes, we can share a whole bunch of scorecards and criteria and things that we've seen work really, really well, but they have to match your vision, your mission, and your value. So with that said, there's kind of 4 or 5 kind of key topics that we want to talk about today. Obviously, I'll really quickly introduce our background review of what we do, but really kind of comes down to the nominator workflow. How do we separate the nominator versus the nominee? Leverage the intake of nomination forms to boost volume, collect information, kind of get the word out about the program, while putting the bulk of the effort on the nominees themselves, relying on those alumni award nominees and those alumni to submit to you their personal information about themselves as an opportunity to enrich your alumni records, as well as for fair, just scorings. Which kind of leads into then also how do you take your nominees and then assign them out to your committees for mass impact? Do you want to blind the data, keep it fair, non-biased and equitable? Do you want to do it committee based? Is it a multi-phase, multi-round review process? And then ultimately, when these programs wrap up, you've got this kind of excitement around the program. You did your marketing, you did your kind of homecoming celebration. Now, what do you do with that data? How do we leverage it amongst other things that you might be doing on campuses to kind of further your goals and kind of your vision? So with that said, again, feel free to throw whatever comments you want into the chat. I do have my screen split into two. So we have kind of an outline on one side, and then off to the right, I do have kind of an interactive tour of Reviewr that we're going to use to kind of power the discussion, primarily using real examples. I have the University of Georgia, I've got Georgia Tech, I've got some other institutions that we work with that we feel are doing things in a really great way. So we'll kind of preview kind of what they're up to as well to kind of map, what we talk about into a visual representation. So with that said, let's go ahead and get going. So the first thing I want to talk about here is kind of a quick introduction of who we are at Reviewr. So, we've been doing this now for well over a decade, kind of the leader in the space when it comes to alumni recognition awards and processes. In fact, we're a platform that was built for you, by you. So what I mean by that is that our team was very actively involved, not just with alumni awards, but also just kind of as a volunteer within associations in general. If you think back about 10 years ago and you have your reading committees and your volunteers and your judging teams and your committees, it was all done through paper, and that was us. So we were the review committees that were getting literally binders sent to our mail step, and we were tasked with handwriting notes and feedback and kind of scoring these applications and then shipping it back to the committees for kind of final decision making. And to be very honest, it was a heck of a mess. It was a whole lot of time that as a volunteer that we didn't have. On top of that, though, we started to see this really bad use case over the years where you'd have these applications coming in through email and through spreadsheets and downloadable documents and built-in web forms. And we started to hear these horror stories of nominations that would come in and go to a spam filter. And so a committee would sit down, they'd actually go through judging, review, and selection processes just to find out that not even all of the alumni were collected. And then you start to see these trends in the space show up where we're engaging with alumni, we're doing the awards, but then we find out that we're not even collecting updated addresses and jobs and things like that. So while we kind of ran the award program, we're still leaving a lot left on the table. And so being that we are already powering hundreds and hundreds of these awards, scholarships, and grants across campuses across the country, we kind of really narrow focus in on how do we kind of optimize not just the alumni recognition award process, but also things like scholarships, grants, board nominations, really any type of intake of application that you need to do something with. And we'll kind of get more into that here in just a minute. So long story short, we started to hear from great alumni associations that we've been working with now for many, many years, who are kind of at the forefront of these programs. Organizations that are actually leveraging alumni recognition awards to create alumni engagement scores, and that are actually tying in real raw metrics of like participation in alumni awards leads to additional participation in other types of things. It leads into increased donorship and contributions, all these other metrics that they actually started with the awards that are now bleeding into these other things. And so we're listening very, very closely at what's going on and trying to provide resources back to you guys. So number one that we want to talk about, and this is kind of where the industry has really changed in the past year. Historically, when you get into an alumni award, you have nominations that come in. You take these nominations and you pick, hey, these are my favorite people. They're going to receive an alumni award. There's two really big challenges that come into play with that. Number one is that we're not actively engaging the alumni themselves. We're only taking the nominations. Number two is there's a pretty big flaw with the data itself. Nobody knows more about themselves than the nominees. And so a lot of times we were seeing these nominations that came in and say, hey, I want to nominate Paula for this year's XYZ award. But we got Paul's address wrong. We got Paul's job wrong. And so it's not even a fair representation of who these alumni are and who the most deserving is. And we can't even use that data now to enrich our alumni databases. So what we've seen over the past probably about 2 years or so, and I would actually go on record and say that I think the University of Georgia was one of the very first that started doing this process, which is why I have on my other screen pulled up an example. They broke this process out into two completely independent pieces. They have a nomination workflow where you have nominators that come in, they put information about themselves, and they actually have a separate workflow where the nominees will join that nomination and they're going to fill out their own portion of it, which we'll kind of get into here in about 5 minutes or so. So looking at the nominator portion itself, again, the main goal here is marketing, right? How do we lower the barrier to get as many nominations as possible that can be used for not only future marketing campaigns within the association, but then also used to go back to the alumni. Now, in fact, it's also a great kind of conversion metric because it allows the nominators themselves to see, hey, did my nominee actually finish their application? Do I want to send them reminder messages? Can they work hand in hand? So there's a lot of benefits by going around that. But at the end of the day, it's all about how do we increase the award program awareness, generate buzz around the program, bring more eyes on you as an organization. But in order to do so, we have to do kind of two things. Number one is we have to keep the nomination process as short, sweet, and simple as humanly possible, right? If the goal is to increase volume, we got to lower the barrier. Number two is that we still need to be collecting information about the nominees in order to provide a fair, compliant, non-biased judging and selection process for the most qualified candidates. So how do we do that? So we'll kind of get more to that here in just a second, but I want to keep things super simple. There's really kind of two keys to this. It's as a nominator, it's who are you? What are you nominating and who for what and why? And then on top of that, let's try to avoid the cyclical nature of these alumni awards. Now, what I mean by that is you can still have dedicated periods of time when the nominees are submitting deliverables for the 2024 or for the 2025, 40 under 40 program. But from a nomination perspective, let's always be collecting all year round, perpetually, always be collecting nominations of deserving alumni nominees. And then when the actual call for applications open, we have this robust library and pool of data that we can then use to reach back out to them. Now, by all means, leverage that data in the meantime for other marketing campaigns that you guys might be doing or other reasons why you might want to be getting in touch with those alumni. So long-winded, let's go ahead and kind of take a visual look at what that would actually look like. So within Reviewr, again, we'll kind of showcase how Reviewr is powering this, but the main goal of today is not to showcase Reviewr itself. It's more so how do we incorporate these philosophies and these workflows into your daily lives. So I want to kind of start with where people are going to go. So first and foremost, we want to leverage your web presence as much as humanly possible, because at some point you need these individuals, both nominators and nominees, to interact with your alumni pages and your web presence. So what we want to see happening is you use your existing website and your existing web infrastructure. Let's showcase, information about the program, dates, deadlines, eligibility. If you have different award categories. So for example, 40 under 40 awards could be its own award or it could be its own category. The pride of the Bobcats, right? Making up some different examples of some mascots here. But let's kind of keep everything into one centralized hub. And then on that page, have a dedicated link that sends people to a very dedicated alumni award collection process. What we don't want to see happening is having a bunch of separate forms for each of the different both awards and or award categories. In fact, you can get really specific and have like one dedicated workflow for awards and scholarships and grants and board nominations. That's for a later conversation. We want to kind of keep the experience very, very consistent amongst all of your programs for all the different people. So a lot of our clients will have their existing website set up to have information about the campaign, and then they're going to click on a link that sends them to something like this, which is what I would call like a marketing landing page, or what I call like a microsite. Now, these microsites are great because it allows you to kind of reiterate dates, deadlines, eligibility, all the things that people aren't going to read, but it gives you one last chance to do so. But the main goal here is to get people to actually begin the nomination process. So kind of just moving along here just a little bit. We want to keep the nomination process super short, super sweet, super simple. This is an actual live example of an alumni association that's using Reviewr. I'm going to kind of bypass this page. So within Reviewr, we do have a profile concept. Now, typically that's reserved for the nominees themselves. So nominators don't typically have profiles because, again, it's all about short, simple, sweet, lower the barrier. So they typically go right to the nomination form. With that said, the nominees will create a profile. It's very, very simple. It's who are you? And that's very, very critical in long-term engagement. It allows the alumni to come back, communicate with you, access feedback, communication, add on to their profiles. Again, we'll get into this later on in today's discussion, but it might be as simple as, okay, let's lower the barrier. So we don't want nominees to give us headshots at this point because they might not even be award recipients. So how do we reserve that for only those that do get selected? That profile concept is kind of what ties this all together. So if you think through all the different moving parts of an alumni award, people, submission forms, file uploads, deliverables, background checks, research, all these things, the concept of a profile will take all these elements and it aggregates them into one centralized hub. Again, what we're looking at here is typically reserved for the nominee. As far as the nomination form, there's kind of two workflows that happen here. Again, there's the nominator portion, there's an email trigger, and then there's the nominee portion. So the nominator comes in, they're going to put in who they are, they're going to maybe put in like who they're nominating, very, very basic brief description on why they're nominating them. And if you want to have them do like a bit more comprehensive essays, you could do reference letters, which we have dedicated triggers for as well. You can still collect things like that. Typically, my recommendation is that if you want that information from a nominator, make it optional. What are the key core elements you have to have? Who, what, and why? Everything else make optional because we're going to leverage the nominees' data and what they submit for the actual review judging selection. This is actually more so used for marketing. What I mean by that is that we don't always use the essays written by the nominators for review and selection processes, because not every nominator is going to put forth the same energy levels, the same effort. They're not even going to be the same caliber of writers than one another. And so while all of their thoughts and their feedback is nice, right? They're not going to nominate somebody they don't want to win. It's not always a fair representation of the nominee. Just because your person that nominated you didn't put forth the same time as somebody else should not mean you don't get an award. So that is why we leverage the content being submitted by the nominees themselves, kind of level the playing field. Now, with that said, these really nice thoughts and this nice feedback that we're getting from nominators absolutely should be used in marketing. So when we have our homecoming or our galas, and we can say, hey, we have Jane, this year's alumni award recipient for this year's 40 under 40 awards. Here's what Ryan had to say about Jane, right? So we still want to capture it. We still want to leverage it, but not to be used for judging. So again, as you can see on my screen, super short, super sweet. It should take the nominators a matter of minutes to fill this out. Now, here's where kind of the magic happens, is as soon as they press submit and they submit their nomination, kind of in the background, we have notifications that go out to the nominee. So it's a, hey, Ryan, you've been nominated for this year's 40 under 40 awards. Click here to fill out your alumni award nomination packet. You can make that anonymous or not. You could say, hey, Barbara's nominated you for this year's award. You could say you've been nominated by one of your peers. Those are all things that we can do within Reviewr. But the magic here is that we now have this bucket of nominations, and now we're starting to collect a bucket of nominees themselves. So let's take a look at that. So when it comes to the nominees, again, this is where we want to put all of our focus and all of our energy. We cannot ask volunteers or nominators to sit down and spend 2 hours writing bios and collecting resumes. Like, they just physically won't do it. And if they do, there's a strong likelihood the data won't be even valid or accurate. So let me ask, if you're going to collect resumes from about the nominees, who's better suited to submit it, the nominee or the nominator? So in this workflow, nominator sends notification to nominee. And at this point, we want the nominee to come into the system. They're going to be the ones filling out their short answers, their essays. This is the really critical piece to this. They're going to be submitting updated jobs that they work at. They're going to be giving you updated addresses, demographic details, all these different things that you need in the future for things like your alumni database and enriching alumni records. So we want to make sure that whatever we collect is thoughtful. We don't want to collect information just for the sake of it. Every single question, every single form field has to have a direct purpose. If there's no purpose for it, drop it. We're not going to do overkill. We're not going to kind of beat a dead horse with what we're collecting. The other kind of critical piece to this is that we've opened a direct one-to-one path of engagement or communication with the alumni. I don't think anybody here ever is like, man, I really wish I had more reasons to engage with my alumni, but this is a perfect use case where we got, opt-ins or one-to-one communicating with them. They're now engaging actively within our organization. So with that said, what do we want to collect from the nominees themselves? So here's example again of as soon as the nomination goes out, the nominee might get a simple email message. It's going to have a link that says, hey, let's come back in here and fill out your nomination form. And then they're brought to like a congratulatory page. Hey, Ryan, congratulations. You've been nominated for this year's prestigious 40 under 40 program. Here's kind of what we're requesting from you. Let's get going. And so they kind of jump into the form itself. So again, we want to know who is Ryan, what's Ryan's kind of graduation date, what schools or colleges does Ryan go to, degrees. If you really want to, you can collect, academic accolades and all that kind of fun stuff, but typically isn't necessary with like a 40 under 40 or an award program. This is some good stuff though, because ultimately, if you want to have like a breakdown of potentially different award recipients from different types of colleges, you can start to categorize people this way. We can kind of get into, hey, Ryan, like what's your current company? What's your current city, state, zip? What's your current contact information? So now when you do outreach 6 months from now, for either donorship or other, campaigns, we have a one-to-one way of getting in touch with them. The data is going to be accurate. It also, and this is kind of completely off topic, is one of the things that we often hear is that the sub 40 category is a demographic that's very, very challenging for us to engage with. They just graduated college. We haven't yet provided them substantial value to go and ask from them stuff or for them to actively want to participate with us, right? It's a very critical time as far as membership goes. And so that's one of the main reasons why we love to see these 35 or these 40 under 40s is because even if you're not an award recipient, you're now kind of, you're being acknowledged, you're partaking in the process, you feel honored, and it kind of lowers the barrier for future asks from them. So kind of a side tangent there, but we'll kind of talk more about that in a future webinar. Additional data collection that we can do here. So short answers, short essays. Again, you do need to have some real raw, tangible information collected from the nominees because at some point your team is going to sit down, they're going to review these nomination packets, and they got to decide who is the 2024 40 under 40 award recipients. And you can't do that off of one short answer. So you do need to collect some additional information from them. We do like essays. With that said, one of the big trends that we've started to see here probably in the last 6 to 8 months is videos. So it allows the applicant to record like a 3 to 5 minute video clip explaining, hey, here's who I am, Kyle, the nominee. Here's some of my accolades. Here's kind of currently what I'm doing. Here's why I feel like I'm a deserving candidate for this year's 40 under 40. And that's great for a couple different reasons. Number one is it allows the applicant or the candidate's personality to kind of shine through. Number two is from an engagement perspective. When your steering committees and when your review committee sits down, they're going to have a far more engaging interaction by listening to those stories and kind of almost like they're talking with them one-to-one versus reading essay after essay after essay, right? That gets very, very redundant and really, really repetitive. And then thirdly is at some point you are going to have recipients. And so what's cooler than having a nomination and then the video to tie together at your award galas to kind of show the audience. So I don't have that kind of showcased here. We can talk a bit more about how we collect files within Reviewr because at the end of the day, your team can actually sit in the system and watch those videos directly in Reviewr while leaving comments and notes and scores, etc. So there's really cool use cases there. But it is kind of a cool trend that we've started to see here probably in the last year or so. References. So this is kind of a polarizing topic. A lot of alumni associations have started to collect external references on behalf of their nominees. I've also seen this very, very heavily being done with both scholarships and board nominations. Now, I know that's not today's discussion, but there are reference components within those. Real quick, one thing we want to avoid seeing is actual reference letters. I've never seen a negative written reference. With that said, it still is a very, very private process. And so a lot of times the references may not want to give it to the person that's submitting it. Number two is that from a reference perspective, it's a lot of work. You're asked to basically start from scratch and come up with this letter talking all these great things about somebody. And again, going back to the nominator nominee example, is if you're including references with your review and selection process, now you're creating a discrepancy in the data. Now, what I mean by that is I might nominate XYZ for an award. My wife might nominate somebody else for an award. I can assure you that she's a substantially better writer than I am. And so if that's being taken into consideration with the selection process, by no means is that a reflection on the nominee. It's the person writing it. So within Reviewr, we actually have this really cool workflow where you can put in the first name, last name, and email of who is supposed to submit that reference. It triggers a notification to them. And it might say, "Dear Tony, you've been asked to write a reference on behalf of so-and-so." And then instead of having them submit a letter, they're instead guided to a reference template. So it asks them 3 simple questions or 5 simple questions as far as like, how do you know this person? Why are you nominating them? So you kind of control the environment. And then when you go to do the review and selection process, you lower the barrier, and every single nominee or applicant in that use case has the exact same reference data about them. The same 3 to 5 questions are asked by every single one of them. So again, we have those workflows already baked into Reviewr. And then the final piece that which I already referenced is file uploads. In this use case, this client or this institution is collecting headshots and resumes and all that kind of fun stuff. You can absolutely do that within the initial application form. What I will say is over the last year or so, we've seen if it's not being included in the phase 1 reviews, you may not necessarily have to collect it. So for example, you might have, I'm going to make up a totally bogus number, 75 nominations that come in. And you're going to narrow it down to the top 20. Let's maybe not ask everybody to submit headshots. Why don't we just save that for the top 20? So the power behind the profile system is that in this use case, Ryan can come back into Reviewr and it can say, "Hey, Ryan, you've been finalist for this year's Alumni Awards for this phase. Now we need you to submit this, this, and that," right? So it's a kind of long-term data collection where we're kind of getting bite-sized pieces as we go versus completely overwhelming people on the front end. I know there's a couple of chats kind of coming in, so if there's other comments, by all means, throw them in there as we kind of move on. The next thing that we want to take a look at is the actual workflows themselves. So how do we take all these nominations that we got and then assign them out to our team for review and selection processes? So let's kind of take a look at that. Number one is that we highly recommend a phased review process. What I mean by that, and it doesn't have to be overly complex, but a lot of the organization that we work with is that they're going to take all these nominations that come in. It could be 10 nominations, it could be 300 nominations, and they split them into yay and nay piles. The reason why I say that, I think all of us on the phone can agree that every single person should get a fair shot at a recognition, right? And it could be a scholarship or it could be a grant. With that said, there needs to be a cutoff. You can't have your team kind of deep diving and doing research and due diligence and scoring on absolutely everybody. There's typically kind of a cutoff line somewhere where it's very clear, not necessarily who the recipients will be, but it's like, hey, these people need some additional consideration versus, unfortunately, like there's not in the top 50% of this year's crop. Now, with that said, let's still engage them, invite them to next year's award program, still celebrate their efforts. So a lot of organizations will say, hey, you know what? Let's take the 100 nominations we got. Let's split the load absolutely randomly. So say we have a 3 or 4 person team that's going through an initial vetting process. Use Reviewr, obviously, for this. And you can say, hey, let's give every single one of them to 4 people at random. They can come in then and do a simple yay, thumbs up, thumbs down, do some type of due diligence on it. Before kind of narrowing it down. Now, I use the term due diligence quite a bit. This is something that we at Reviewr can potentially assist with in a separate conversation. But we've started to hear some stories over the last couple of years where a steering committee would sit down and they'd say, hey, you know what? This is our favorite applicant for this year. They encompass everything that the organization has to show. They are this year's 40 under 40 recipient. Just to find out months down the road that there were, potentially, legal issues being taken against them or other things that just didn't show up in the application form, right? Rightfully so. And so we do recommend taking your kind of overall bucket, narrowing it down, and then spending a little bit of time, doing some LinkedIn research on them, doing some background checks, personal research, tying in potentially other teams, right? Have they been donors? Have they participated in other, alumni engagement campaigns? Start to incorporate that type of stuff into their profile. So the profile no longer is just the nomination and the nominee portion. It's now those two pieces plus potentially a little bit of your own self-research for your committees. Now that's where the rubber hits the road. So once you have it kind of narrowed down, then we want to send it off to our committee to do a review and selection process. I won't talk too much more about compliance yet. We'll kind of get into that here in a second. But we absolutely should be leveraging some type of mathematic-based scorecard. We should be leveraging some type of randomization. We probably don't want the committee to review every single nomination yet, although you definitely can share them with them. We want to have them review maybe 3 to 5 each, and then blind the data. So they're justifying the results on the merits of the nominee, not who they are or what their demographics or what their background looks like. And then of course you can still have some type of finalist deliberation review, etc. So I'm going to jump around to the appendix real fast. And I want to share two separate, what I call like score sheets. One would be for the internal review, and then the second one will be for the kind of steering committees or the actual judging and selection process. I'm going to be following up after this webinar with this entire thing. I'll also include these as images, just in case they're a bit hard to see or a bit hard to follow. So the first one I wanted to share is a sample vetting phase score sheet. So as you can see here, it's only one question. Which makes total sense. If you're tasked with narrowing down a list of potentially 200 to 300 people, or even 50 people, down to the top 10 to the top 15, you can't overdo it with comprehensive score sheets. You have to open it up. Does it have everything that we need? And then in this case, what are they kind of on a score from 1 to 5? Do they encompass everything that your organization has to offer? So I graduated from an institution where our mascot was a bobcat. So I would say like, does this person kind of live the bobcat lifestyle? Are we proud to have them as our alumni? Are they a great candidate, but maybe for future years, right? Is this their first nomination? And we've had people who have been nominated. So for example, if it's a 40 under 40, do we have somebody that's been nominated for 9 straight years, has never won an award? It's their very last chance. Those are the types of things that we want to maybe consider with the initial vetting process, knowing that XYZ person is only 31, they got 9 more years at doing this, right? Again, because we know that, we can, in future years label them as such. We can automatically include them in future steering committee reviews and kind of help jump the line a little bit. All these different things that we can do. Other score sheets to kind of review. This is one that I really like. It's for the final vetting and review process. This is actually one that's being used by Georgia State University. And it's roughly 4 or 5 questions on a scale of 1 to 5 per. So as you can kind of see here, it's 0, which just means like they just can't rate it, and 5 is like exemplary. They're a model alumni. They're remarkable and they're unparalleled. They're the absolute cream of the crop. They're focused on like 4 or 5 key categories. So impact in their field or kind of in their expertise. Are they, providing impact in the scientific community, in the business community, whatever it might be? Are they demonstrating impact at a community or philanthropic endeavor? Really, really like that question. I think a lot of times we start to focus a lot on like prestige and job status and things like that, but we don't take into consideration family life or their volunteer efforts or things that speak more to their character than their accolades, right? So I want to make sure that we focus really heavily on some of that type of stuff. Values and mission, if we are incorporating like a demographic type of thing to the programs, kind of scoring that. And then, dedication to your mission. Are they active volunteers? Are they donors, right? Those should be incorporated within your score sheets. And then the last example I want to take a quick look at, very, very similar concept. This one's got 5 simple questions, like overall, like how professional are they? What's their philanthropic on a scale of 1 to 5? Overall, how great are they? Let's talk about progress, impact in their industry, innovators, and then also impact for their age. So again, we don't want to just give you guys these as templates to use. As you can see, there is some very strong similarities, but there's also components missing from some that aren't from others. So for example, this one has impact for age, right? So this would be a great use case of like, hey, they're 32, they got 7 more years to go. This person's 39. Let's kind of take that into consideration. So I'm going to backtrack here just a little bit because again, I know that was kind of our appendix. So we talked a little bit about nominations coming in, the actual nominee portion, setting up the workflows of who should be reviewing who, how do we do that? The next step that I want to kind of take a look at is the actual review and selection process. So let's go ahead and jump ahead here, which is the award recipient side of things. So first and foremost, it doesn't matter if it's a initial vetting phase or if it's an interview phase or a final review. two things need to happen, and this is primarily from a compliance perspective. We want to make sure that we are randomly distributing nominations to our committees for review, and B, we want to make sure that we're blinding of the data. So when the review committee comes in, they theoretically shouldn't be seeing first name, last name, email. We're collecting all this information because you're going to need it from a data enrichment perspective, but they should be focused more on the essays and the content and their achievements, not oh yeah, I remember that person. They're a great donor or whatever it might be, right? Or their demographic background. So number one, always blind the data. Number two is the phase one review process. I already kind of alluded to this. It should be a yay or nay. With that said, yay and nay shouldn't be so black and white. It's not just a simple thumbs up, thumbs down. It's thumbs up because X, Y, Z, right? Because they are a prime example of what it means to be whatever your mascot is, or they are fulfilling their mission, right? Whatever it could be. And then phase two is where we really need to be quantitative. I hate to say it, but we've heard over the past couple of years where, and it happens less so with award programs, but very common with board nominations, scholarships, grants, where somebody put a lot of time and energy into their application form. They're told, unfortunately, you're not this year's 40 under 40. They see who the recipients are and they say, well, that's BS. I'm a far better candidate than them. Like, why not? Why them? Why not me? So this is a whole another topic we can kind of get into in the future, but it's called proof of process, which basically says that on the front-facing side of things, when you go to submit your nomination for this year's program, here's the process you're going to go through. You're going to get reviewed by 2 people at random. You're going to advance to a second phase of review. You're going to have 3 people use a score sheet. That way, if the time ever does come, we actually have pure raw data and metrics that says, not only do we follow the process that we said we would, but it's mathematic based. There is no bias. It is a very kind of transparent process, which kind of helps elevate you as an institution, as an organization as well. So at the end of the day, we've gone through the entire review and selection process. I do want to kind of show you real briefly kind of how that pairing system does work within Reviewr, because we do have a workflow tool. Basically, what ends up happening is you can create what I call buckets. Now, again, there's 2 different ways of doing this. You could have a bucket per award. So for example, you could have all the submissions in one bucket. You can have them go through the internal review bucket, the selection committee, and then the final selection. Or we've seen some organizations do kind of a dual process where they have, maybe 7 different alumni award categories. Each category is a bucket. And then within there, they have different phases. But at the end of the day, what I'm talking about is we have to take these applicants and we got to share it with our team to review. So in Reviewr, you basically would have them put into their buckets automatically. So I'd have in this example, let's do the final selection. So I've got, maybe 15 nominations in the final selection bucket. I can then open it up and I could say, okay, I got Barney, Gabrielle, Gilligan, Leslie, Richard, and Sheldon. These are my 5 candidates for this year. And I can actually show how many individual committee members are supposed to review them, and then who those individual reviewers are. On top of that, I could say, hey, for a fairness, compliance perspective, or even a time perspective, I could say, let's just give every single one of them. In this case, it says like no more than 6, no less than 4, but I could actually type in, let's give every single nominee 3 review members. And the system will give it out at random to 3 different people. On top of that too, if you need to have, like, say, for example, a review member has to recuse themselves because there is a conflict of interest that you weren't aware of, you can actually jump in here and modify this and say, okay, well, unfortunately, Mark cannot review Gabrielle. So we'll just uncheck Gabrielle's name and then reassign Gilligan out. So we have this really robust pairing system in Reviewr where we can take all of your nominations on a per category, per phase basis, divvy it out to your team for review, judging, and selection. So after the review and selection process is complete, obviously I'll show this to you real quickly. Within Reviewr, you actually have a results page. So when the review team comes into the platform, I already showcased a score sheet for you, but this is kind of the interface that they would see. So off to the left-hand side, you have like your nomination packet. So this is nominator, nominee, references, resumes, everything that you want your steering committees to review shows up in one dedicated place. As you can see, I'm also blinding data that they can't see from their point of view. That right-hand side is your score sheet, which I already kind of showed you. But at the end of the day, once they actually finish their evaluation, the system does have a built-in leaderboard. So as I kind of progress through here, here just a little bit, you'll notice that on a per category basis, so this would be my 40 under 40 finalist section, it'll show you here's all my candidates: Leslie, Sheldon, Richard, Gabrielle. And then off to the right, it shows each one of the review committee individual scores as well as averages. So you can actually mathematically say, hey, here's number 1, 2, 3, etc. This is also great for the kind of vetting phase where you could say, let's just grab the top 25 or top 50 and then bulk select them and then just advance them to the final review or phase 2, whatever that might be. So now review process is done. I am trying to keep an eye on the clock here. I got about 5 more minutes I want to take up. Is the data. So this is absolutely critical. So at this point in time, we have all these interactive nominators. They're people that are not part of the institution, likely, that are engaging with you as an alumni association. You have all these nominees who are voluntarily providing you information: essays, first name, last name, email. A couple quick metrics here. So the average employee tenure is about 4 years, and the average person will move about 11 and a half times over the course of their life. My gut tells me that nobody's going to complain about getting updated records when we have these type of metrics, right? We always want to know where they're working, what their job status is, where they're currently living, where can we send them mailers to. So we got to take this data out of Reviewr and then dump it into your alumni databases. We're going to enrich existing alumni data scores. If you have different staff members who are in charge of that, let's start to maybe do some alumni scoring. This is for a future webinar, potentially even as early as next month, where we're going to take one of our clients that we currently work with that actually has real trends of okay, we're going to provide alumni engagement scores on nominees as well as those that were recipients. And then over the course of 5 years, have they participated in other things? Are they active in the community? Are they contributing? All these really powerful things that if you didn't bridge the gap between the alumni records and the award records, that we'll never be able to have. So again, I've said it so many times, but I don't want to lose sight of how important it is to have updated alumni metrics and stuff like that. So quite a bit of topics today. I know my goal is to run through them at a relatively high level, kind of just introducing those kind of 5 components that make up what I feel is the ultimate workflow. Obviously, within each of those elements, there's a whole bunch of bleeding points and a bunch of other tasks that we can kind of get into. But that was my main goal today. Wanted to open up for any question and answer that anybody might have, either in regards to, if you don't do things this way, or if it's not a 40 under 40, how this could translate to your processes, things that you're doing that you think are super innovative. Well, I rephrase that are super innovative that you think the community should be aware of, other potential future webinar topics that you want to hear. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of just hang out for about 5 minutes. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Great question. So on average, how many nominations come in for an individual alumni award, high, low, or average? Within Reviewr, we see about on average, and I want to be careful how I word this because we're using the term nominations, and I think there's kind of 2 parallels. There's nominations and the actual formal application filled out by the nominee. Now I know where we're going with that is that that's not the current workflow, that we can only go off the nominations. Within Reviewr, our average is 110, and that's amongst a whole lot of organizations. On the low end, 15 to 20; on the high end, thousands, right? It just depends on how the program is structured. What I will say is kind of 2 important elements on top of that. On average, organizations that use Reviewr see about a 35% uptick in volume for a couple of reasons. Number 1 is that nomination workflow, and then number 2 is the tracking ability that we have. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. When you break this process into 2 pieces, you have now a new metric to look at, which is your conversion rates. So let's just say, for example, we had 100 nominations. We need to be tracking what % of those nominations convert into actual applicant entries. Because it's not always about the volume, it's about the quality of the candidates and what we're collecting from them. But what I can say is that we know how many people have started nominations, who they are, how far they've made it, and we have built-in reminder messages that can go out. So anybody that attempts to start a nomination, that volume will go up. Number 2 is now we know how many nominations we've received. We can then start to look at, of those nominations, how many of them are starting their nomination application, how many are completed, how many are in progress, and who are they? And then we can also send reminders to that demographic of people. So both pools should go up pretty tremendously. But I would probably say somewhere in the ballpark of 75 to 100 nominations is about average. And as I'm kind of talking to you, more questions might be coming in. It also totally depends on the award program, right? If it's a 40 under 40 award, we're talking about a very specific demographic of people. If we're talking about, for example, like it's like Purdue, that'd be a great use case. Like we're literally dealing with Purdue engineering students under this age of 40. Like you're not going to have the same as like the University of Central Florida with 60,000 students, right? So that will make a pretty big impact. Any other questions I can answer today? Again, a very open door here. So if you have any questions, feel free to directly contact us one-to-one. If you get tired of us, let us know. But we do a whole bunch of these webinars. We'll be doing one at least next month, if not two. So if there's other topics that you want to see, please let us know. But yeah, we're very easy to get in touch with if you ever want to kind of explore not only how Reviewr can work for you, but also just more industry best practices or topics. Please do let us know. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I really appreciate everybody for not just joining, but also participating, and looking forward to kind of future webinars with you.